Aloha. I'm Representative Cynthia Thielen. I represent the windward side of Oahu, and thank you for listening to our program. Today I have a very special guest with me, Henry Curtis, Executive Director of Life of the Land, which is one of Hawaii's most wonderful, strong, stalwart, and long-lasting environmental nonprofit organization. Henry, maybe you can just tell people, how long has Life of the Land been in existence?
We were founded in February of 1970 by a group of women who went down to Waikiki with brochures, with pictures of toilet bowls on the brochure saying, "Do you know what you're swimming in?" Because the Sand Island wastewater treatment facility became the first wastewater treatment facility in Hawaii, and that was 2 years later.
Wow. Wow. So Life of the Land has had a very active role in many, many things through the years, and I think Hawaii's environment deserves to give you a lot of praise and credit for the accomplishments. Right now, Life of the Land is an intervener in the very major and serious proceeding before the Public Utilities Commission. And that is the question of whether or not Hawaiian Electric can sell itself, the utility, to a company that's based in Florida, 5,000 miles away, that then would control Hawaii's electricity and utilities. That company is named NextEra. And Henry, your Life of the Land is one of how many interveners?
There were 29 interveners originally. 2 have dropped out, so there are 27 interveners left, plus the Consumer Advocate, plus Hiko, Miko, Helco, and NextEra. So we have a healthy group. The largest contested case proceeding the state has ever seen. We eclipse Waiahole.
Well, and it's the largest because it's incredibly broad-reaching. It governs all of the electric power that would be provided to Oahu residents and businesses, neighbor islands, with the exception of Kauai, which wisely has a co-op that's operating very well for the residents on the island of Kauai.
And it's also big because we have the Department of Defense in. We have 2 counties, Maui and the Big Island. We have 3 state agencies. We have a fossil fuel company. We have a gas utility, and we have all kinds of different interveners. So it's really massive proceeding that will shape our future. And we really have 2 fundamentally different questions that have to be asked. One is, if you want to be taken over by someone located far, far away, what rate will you have? And obviously, the lower the rate, the more reliable, the better. But the other question is, do you really want to be taken over by someone 5,000 miles away?
That's the scary part to me. The idea that a company that is huge would take over and buy Hawaiian Electric. It's not a merger. They've tried to do this little cutesy thing of saying, oh, we're just simply merging. It's not a merger, it's a direct sale to the company NextEra 5,000 miles away. And then when you look at that, what is your access? What is the residents' access? How many people pick up the phone to call and get some information from a company that is not based in Hawaii, and then you have to play the number game? Press 1 if you speak English. Press 2 if you want to whatever, and it takes an immense amount of time to get to a live body. That to me means that were NextEra be permitted to buy Hawaiian Electric, we're going to be dealing with people in Florida by long distance, and will we ever get a body, and will they care?
And while some people have said, well, NextEra, if they acquire Hawaiian Electric, will have 2 companies, Florida Power and Light and Hawaiian Electric, but they're not on the same footing because Florida Power and Light will be directly owned by NextEra, whereas Hawaiian Electric would be owned by a holding company, which would be owned by NextEra.
So you're even more removed
Yes.
from direct accountability.
Yeah.
And NextEra, when I took a look at what they stand for and what they've done, their corporate plan is so different from what we as a state are trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve energy independence. We're trying to support families being able to provide much of their own power, maybe not 100%, but much of their own power, and to be able to get into a much better situation where we're using the renewable energy sources that we in Hawaii are blessed with.
Yes.
And NextEra, in contrast, is, as I understand it, relies upon nuclear power. They fight any solar projects that are just owned and operated by an individual, by a family, and instead they want to have all the power and the consumer having to pay them for the delivery of all that power.
Yes. Florida Power and Light gets about 2/3 of their power from natural gas, about 25% from nuclear, 1% from renewables. And their 10-year plan says that in 10 years, they'll still be at 1% renewable.
Oh my word. So that's so different from what we're doing here.
And the 1% will be centralized systems. There'll be 1 or 2 solar farms and a couple biomass facilities, but it's principally not rooftop solar, which is the way we're moving.
Well, the Public Utilities Commission, to its credit, has been holding listening sessions on the neighbor islands and then on Oahu as well. I had introduced legislation to mandate them to do it, but they wisely decided to do it on their own, so then, of course, we didn't need to pass a bill. The listening sessions, I participated in the one on Oahu, and people are very deeply concerned about this proposed sale. And I was grateful that PUC, the commissioners, were there and listening to people as they expressed their concern. Unions, union members and unions have said, fine, because we've reached an agreement where our members will not be terminated for 2 years. That's, to my mind, very short-sighted, because 2 years is not a way that you can get job security for yourself or your family. But that set aside, other than union members and some business people, the majority of the, well, I think virtually all of the residents that showed up to testify were deeply concerned and saying to the Public Utilities Commission, don't approve the sale. It's not in Hawaii's best interest.
What I thought was interesting is, first, not all the unions came out in support of it. The carpenters and the IBEW are the 2 unions that have come out in favor of this. Now, I find the IBEW statement to be somewhat problematic. That's a polite way of saying it. Because they said, 1, we will have no layoffs in 2 years.
For 2 years.
For 2 years. But that was part of the December 3rd announcement last year by HECO and NextEra, and as part of the application filed with the Public Utilities Commission saying there'll be no layoffs for 2 years. After NextEra made that commitment, the union filed a motion to intervene in the proceeding. They can't now say that they've made a settlement getting the terms that were originally in before they filed to intervene. And another thing they said is that there'll be job training. And the only job training so far that's been publicly announced is that the NextEra will train their own workers, which every company always trains their own workers, and they'll recruit from the University of Hawaii, which any company would be stupid to not recruit from if they were in Hawaii. So far, there is nothing public that indicates they actually got anything.
Oh, that's very disappointing. The what I look at is Hawaii has now set in place a law that says we will be energy independent. We will have 100% renewable energy, not in the transportation field, but for electricity, and that would be in the 2040s decade. I don't see, other than lip service by NextEra, that it has anything in place to actually get Hawaii there, unless they say, we're going to own everything, we'll bill the ratepayers for everything, and we'll make that happen, but it will be at a significant cost, versus the way we were moving ahead for individual families to be able to work on getting photovoltaic systems in place and then be able to provide excess power back to the grid.
Well, curiously, Florida Power and Light is a very centralized utility. They mostly produce power in very centralized facilities, whereas Hawaii is moving to a very distributed model. And so what NextEra has said is, we will learn from Hawaiian Electric on what they're doing. Now, why would we bring in somebody who has to learn from our people on how to proceed? So that's the first strange thing. The second strange thing is actually the rates. NextEra has made a great announcement on, one, they will spend billions and billions and billions of dollars, and two, rates will go down. Now, you have to ask, how is that possible? Obviously, it's possible if you rip out highly efficient old generators that are costing you a lot of money and put in really clean new ones that burn much more efficiently. You can do it, but you need a plan. Simply saying that you're going to borrow $10 billion and lower rates without explaining how you're going to do it, you have to be very gullible to find that a winning solution.
Well, you know, I took a look at something that's on a much smaller scale, but the other day I was over at the Ala Moana Center. And of course, the Ala Moana Center is owned by General Growth, based in Chicago, I believe. And then I believe a fourth of it is owned by an Australian corporation. So totally foreign ownership for Ala Moana Center. And I can remember taking our children to the Ala Moana Center when Sears had the place where you could get new tires, the automotive lube shop, safety check, all of that, and it was great. There was a little store called Aida right as you went in on the ground level, and the children adored that, going in and finding all of these very inexpensive little treasures that they adored. And then the tower building houses about 80 doctors that many of us, dentists and doctors that many of us use. Offshore ownership came in, took our local shopping center. We now have our dentists and doctors on at the maximum 1-year lease, where it can be terminated and they're gone because the building will be demolished. We've lost Sears, which was such a wonderful store for local people. Workers' boots. I mean, those were just a marvelous store for them. And Aida's no longer there. And we've ended up being a luxury center with condos for foreigners to come in and park their money and be able to buy a condo that's in the millions of dollars. And we've ended up with high-end department stores that you just don't see local sharpers there at all. So here's your foreign ownership coming in and saying, this is what we feel is best for Hawaii. Well, no, thank you. And here we have NextEra from Florida wanting to come in and take over and tell us what's going to be best for Hawaii.
And a similar example would be to say that, why do we have 4 county governments? They're so inefficient. Why doesn't Honolulu just represent the entire state and will eliminate the county governments on Maui, on the Big Island, and on Kauai? Because that would be more efficient. But efficiency is not why we move to Hawaii or live in Hawaii. We don't live in Hawaii because we have the lowest rates. We don't. We don't because we're the most efficient. We choose to live here, and we choose to live here for the values that we have. And one of the things I thought most interesting, what NextEra said is, hey, we're just learning about Malama Aina and Aloha and everything, but our triple bottom line, our corporate values, just happen to exactly coincide with that.
You know, when they do things like that, I politely said, they lose credibility in my mind. And it's such a PR push. It's like someone I believe said it's like they're running an election and trying to appear more Hawaiian than people that have lived here for generations. And it's offensive to me. But the whole idea where they're trying to use that terminology, oh folks, it's a merger. Don't worry, we're just merging. You won't really notice us as we come in. Well, you go take a look at the filings that have been made, and there's no way it's a merger. They're buying out our local company. Florida Corporation will own our utility. And I find that to be very frightening for the people here in the islands.
And rather than show us any plans or substance, what they did in the last week or two is announce they're bringing in a whole slew of attorneys from the mainland to help them in their contested case proceeding, as if what we need is more legal minds from Florida and elsewhere to ram something through. And
I'll bet you that at the appropriate times they'll be dressed in Hawaiian shirts.
Probably.
I mean, someone is pulling the local advising from behind the scenes, but it's fake. I mean, it just is fake. They can't stand up and carry it off. I am concerned for the most part because we had been working in sort of stops and starts and stops and starts with Hawaiian Electric to get Hawaiian Electric to change its century-old corporate plan and move into the present renewable energy generation. And they were beginning to do that. And I don't know if the fear of what the future would lead for them is what caused them to say, okay, we'll sell and we'll support this sale. I don't know if that's the case, but I do think that we could move together into a renewable energy future. With NextEra coming in, that's off the table. It's not going to happen.
I think traditionally, electric utilities are very conservative. They do what they've always done. And for 100 years, they've done the same thing. And things didn't really change much for them, so they could just continue to move forward doing the same thing. There's been such rapid change in the last 3 or 4 years with solar, with batteries about to come on, with rooftop stuff, that I think it has overwhelmed Hawaiian Electric. And they could make the change. I think to make the change, they'd have to have far greater support among their middle managers who haven't burnt out yet. They have some very smart people in the middle levels and the lower levels of their company who haven't gone brain dead, basically. And so the upper leadership would have to make way for the younger people. Short of that, I think the proposed merger, acquisition, buyout, sell-off is going to probably lead to the breakup of Hawaiian Electric, because for 100 years there's been economies of scale. The bigger you are, the more efficient you are. And now with all the micro technology, all the rooftop solar, all the batteries coming on, it's becoming cheaper and cheaper to exit the grid. And so in 5 or 10 years there may not be a grid left, or there may be a bunch of very small microgrids that are community-based, community-controlled, and nonprofits.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense.
And municipal utilities. I don't want to cut out Maui County, which is looking at a municipal. So there are different models. And in fact, the Consumer Advocate proposed a B Corporation, which is a for-profit social benefit organization. So there are different models out there.
Okay. So what we're looking at is within the 5, maybe I'm hoping 5 years, we'll have much more affordable battery systems that will actually allow individual homeowners to back up. And then coupled with the photovoltaic, if the prices can come to where that's feasible, where your payback would be 3 years or so, then we're going to find more people exiting the grid. Now, NextEra is going to fight that.
Oh, immensely. And if we allow them in, it's going to be much harder, because they'll fight that, and they will say, since we paid all this money to buy it, if somebody wants to leave the grid, they should pay an exit fee to go off the grid. Whereas there is so much exciting technology around the world being developed. I mean, in Europe, they're testing driving a car down an electric lane that has an energy source underground, and the induction field feeds power into the battery, so that if your household, due to so many cloudy days, the battery is running down, you could drive your electric car over an electric lane, recharge it, and then power your house.
Oh my word, Henry, this is marvelous.
Now that's probably
this isn't science fiction.
No,
this
it's
is
not science fiction. It's real. It's probably a little expensive now, but the technology is changing so rapidly that it will be entirely feasible in the near future.
Well, it's going to be an even harder battle to be able to reach that energy independence level if PUC allows NextEra to buy Hawaiian Electric, because they have the money, the clout, and probably the know-how to find the ways to defeat all of this.
They do, and what they're best known for is manipulating the system, getting tax breaks, getting breaks in the law, and if they don't like a PUC commissioner, actually finding ways to remove them.
Jeepers. That's not a Hawaiian kind of company.
No, it's not.
At all.
In fact, you can just look at the litigation going on at the PUC and the type of arguments being raised by their lawyers raise it to another level from the type of issues that we face traditionally in utility issues. I mean, all lawyers like to represent their client, but we do it sort of in a more aloha style here.
Right.
Whereas Florida is more like we take prisoners.
Well, I have to talk for a minute about one of my most favorite and passionate renewable energy sources, and that's the wave energy. We now have two wave energy converters in the waters off of Marine Corps Base Hawaii, and the third berth has been awarded, and those people will be here in November to talk with the military base and the Navy. So it's really exciting, because when you look at Hawaii's energy sources, I strongly believe that wave energy is going to be a major source, not 100%, but a major source for all of the islands. And I'm delighted that the research is going ahead. Now, how that will play into things, I'm not sure with the proposed NextEra purchase.
In Florida, NextEra, Florida Power and Light buys very little from independent power producers. They like to do things themselves. They do have a few, but not many. Whereas wave energy and other ocean energy could feed commercial projects along the shore. For example, Ala Moana could be powered by a wave system off the coast.
Okay. If Chicago liked the idea.
If Chicago,
so here we are,
and if Australia
right.
got off its coal kick. Actually, they do have a wave system in the water they're testing there. So.
They do. And then also, it certainly is active in Europe, in England, Scotland definitely, and Ireland. So the technology is moving ahead. It's not quite prime time, but I would say at the same time the batteries come online to be prime time, I believe that wave energy technology will. There's also a way that the Marine base could get the amount of power that it needs directly from the wave energy converters offshore. So there's a way that for military installations, they could be the leaders. And that's where they have, I believe, thankfully, more clout, because they can step forward and become more energy independent as a base themselves.
It's amazing that Hawaii has so much renewable energy available. We can power the state many, many times over, and even export some.
It'd be excellent. And then when the battery storage really becomes more mature, that's a feasibility of doing it.
Yeah.
Henry, I'm very glad that Life of the Land is an intervener in this proceeding. And I certainly applaud the others that are out there representing what the individual residents are really wanting to have happen, and that's to have people be able to say, Public Utilities Commission, don't sell us off to Florida. That's not in the best interest of Hawaii residents or in the best interest of what our state is trying to achieve. I think our goal for 2040s is doable. I think it really is. And again, that's with the technology coming on board. And we just need a owner of the utility that's going to be both a player and help us lead us into
Yes.
that future. And unfortunately, Florida has not shown us the way at all. So I really appreciate you being a part of that. When do the proceedings start?
January 20. The proceedings themselves start at Neil Blaisdell Center on November 30th.
Okay.
And the room will be large enough to have some members of the public attend, and the media can attend also.
Okay. And that's going to be a weekday?
Yeah, weekday it will probably be something like 9:30 to 4:30
Okay.
for the first 3 weeks, except for December 4th.
Okay. Okay. And then things shut down and it goes back to the Public Utilities Commission
Well,
and their staff.
But then we have to get the transcript, then we have to write briefs.
Right.
So we have several documents we have to file before then. We have the hearing, we have briefs afterwards, and the PUC will have to sort it all out and expect a decision in June at the earliest and maybe later.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much. I thank you and Life of the Land for
Thank
being
you, Rep.
leaders in our
Representative
community.
Thielen.
Oh, absolutely. It's just been such a help to have you out there, and what you do at the legislature is so valuable when you come in and testify on bills. And I thank you so much, and thank you, Life of the Land.
Thank you.
Aloha to all of you, and I am glad you were with us today. This is a very important, probably one of the most important things in this decade or the decade to come. Let's hope that the decision is the right one and Hawaii retains control of its renewable energy and its goals. Aloha.
Aloha.